Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We turn our attention now to the Ohio family massacre trial. Prosecutors say a bitter child custody battle motivated George Wagner IV and several of his family members to kill 8 members of the Roden family back in 2016. The state called a crime scene investigator to the stand today to testify about crime scene number 3. That's where Hannah Mae Roden's body was found. Court TV legal correspondent Joy Massacre joins us live now from Pike County, Ohio, with the latest from court today. Joy, great to see you. Good afternoon to you. All right, the crime scene was again the focus today. This one, crime scene number 3. Now, BCI agent Brian White was on the stand. He was describing that crime scene, and that's where the bodies of Hannah Mae Roden, I believe her brother Chris Roden Jr., and her mom Dana were found. So what were some of the key takeaways from his time on the stand?
Yeah, and so just kind of for context, this case has been going in kind of chronological order. The state first started off by having investigators talk about crime scene 1, and then they moved on to crime scene 2, and then they moved on to this scene, crime scene number 3. This is 3122 Union Hill Road, and as you mentioned, Hannah Mae Roden, who was at the center of this child custody dispute. It was a child, Sophie Wagner, that she had with Jake Wagner, that is believed to be the center of the dispute here, and really the motivation for the Wagner family to kill Hannah Mae Roden and other family members who happened to be there. So it was her brother, Chris Roden Jr., as well as her mom, Dana Roden, who were found dead at this third of the 4 crime scenes. Let's listen to a little bit of the testimony of BCI agent Brian White.
We could tell that there was at least one gunshot wound that we could tell right away, but that also documents there was some tissue and stuff that had been lost from her body, and that was there on the bed too, close to the other pillow that was sitting next to her.
And C215 or 215, which is 7854.
That's a close-up photograph, and that's of Dana. That's documenting the injuries that we could tell, obviously on the forehead and the front face area.
Okay, and that's more from the left side of her face, correct?
That's correct. It would be, yeah, being on the left side of the bed here.
So you hear these kind of graphic descriptions, and you hear the references to these images, really disturbing images that we are not showing our viewers here on Court TV. And you remember, Michael, we discussed it yesterday. It was the basis for a motion for mistrial by the defense because they claimed that these images were prejudicial. Ultimately, the judge did rule for the state this morning, and so the state has continued on with showing the jury these graphic images. But because it is a very complicated case, I just wanted to kind of lay out for the viewers. We started with crime scene number 1. That's where the state started to call their initial witnesses, the investigators, and that is where Chris Roden Sr., Hannah Mae Roden's father, as well as Gary Roden, who's Chris Roden Sr.'s cousin, that's where they were found at crime scene number 1. And then we heard about crime scene number 2. That is where Frankie Roden, that's Hannah's brother, Frankie Roden, and his fiancee, Hannah Gilley, where they were found killed, and 2 children were found on the scene alive there. And then we moved on to today, crime scene number 3, Dana Roden, that's Hannah's mom, Hannah Mae Roden herself, her brother Chris Roden Jr., all found dead there, and her 5-day-old daughter found actually alive on that scene, Kylie Roden. This is a child that she had with Chris Gilley, Hannah Gilley's brother, actually. And then tomorrow we do expect to hear more about crime scene 3, the completion of testimony there. And then again, then we would move on to crime scene number 4, where Kenneth Roden, Hannah Roden's uncle, was found dead. So the state being very methodical, going scene by scene and really laying out the basic details and the graphic images that accompany them. Michael?
Yeah, Joy, as you said, a complicated case, so it makes sense to sort of do this in a linear fashion, try to keep it understandable for the jury. Now, there was another important stipulation reached today We know they reached one a couple of days ago. Explain what happened with today's stipulation.
Yeah, so again, you know, the state has just been going through pieces of evidence that are relevant to the investigation, including cigarette butts that were found at crime scene number 3, and they were not found to have any Wagner DNA. In fact, they were found to have Hannah Mae Roden's DNA. But then there was a $5 bill that was found on scene, which was tested, and essentially, the DNA was not sufficient for comparison. That is the stipulation reached by attorneys from both sides. Let's listen.
The parties have a stipulation regarding this item. State's Exhibit C407, which is a $5 bill found in the backyard of 3122 Union Hill Road, identified as BCI item number 3, lab number 24, was sent to the lab for DNA testing. There was insufficient DNA for comparison on this item for comparison purposes.
Mr. Parker.
That's correct, Judge.
The jury is instructed to accept the stipulation that was just given as being established as fact, as fully as if it had been established through testimony here in the courtroom.
So it's so fascinating, Michael, because remember, at crime scene number 1, attorneys for both sides ultimately reached an agreement. There was a stipulation that there was no Wagner DNA found anywhere on crime scene number 1. And then we got to crime scene number 2. And then, again, ultimately there was a stipulation, an agreement reached between the attorneys that there was no Wagner DNA, including the defendant, on crime scene 2. And now we're at crime scene number 3, and they've reached a stipulation pertaining to that money. Again, there was no Wagner DNA. Well, it was insufficient to determine if any Wagner DNA was there. So far, we haven't seen any Wagner DNA linked to any of the crime scenes, Michael.
Joy, clearly that's a weakness in the state's case, this lack of DNA evidence. So how are they trying to overcome that in your estimation?
I mean, circumstantial means would be really the short answer here, and something that they have relied very heavily on, it seems, has been shoe print evidence. We've seen that at prior scenes they pointed to shoe print evidence. Just recently, yesterday, at crime scene number 2, we heard about that shoe print in the kitchen that was dusted and, of course, taken into evidence. And we heard even during opening statements, prosecutor Angela Candepa talking about the significance of shoe print evidence. And in pretrial motions, we saw the intention of the state to bring in a shoe print expert to analyze shoe prints and, you know, the information about the Walmart receipt, the purchase of the shoes, the images of Angela Wagner seemingly purchasing those shoes or spotted at the Walmart around the time of the purchase here in Waverly, Ohio. But here is what was said in court today by the witness about the shoe print.
Hey, Lieutenant, can you tell us what we are looking at there?
So what you're seeing here in this photograph is the entryway into the residence. So we're back over here at this entryway right here, the main door coming from the porch into the residence, and that's that tile or that vinyl that's right there at the entryway. That's what we process first and foremost for footwear impressions. And you'll see the black fingerprint powder has been all over the tile or whatnot, or that vinyl. And that's what I was explaining on how to enhance them. So at this point, they would be enhanced.
Yeah, so it will be interesting to see how this shoe print evidence comes into play. You notice that as these investigators have taken the stand, each and every one of them has been asked about their footwear, where they walked around the crime scenes in question. Remember that the family members were also asked about their footwear, right? And so something that clearly has become important to the state's case.
Yeah, it sounds like you're exactly right, that in place of that DNA, they're going to count on this shoe print. So we'll see how they tie it all together. All right, Joy, thank you so much for that report. Appreciate it. As always, still with us is former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. And Nima, you heard Joy there. In place of DNA, they're hoping shoe prints kind of fills that void for this jury. Can it? Will it? How do you feel about shoe print evidence?
Michael, I hope so, because the state here, they're taking this shock and awe approach. I mean, we know this is one of the most gruesome murders in Ohio state history, but where's the evidence against George Wagner? I mean, this isn't the state of Ohio versus the Wagner family. This is the state of Ohio versus George. And we know, obviously, his brother and his mom have pled. They're going to testify. But you don't want to rely on cooperator testimony only, or snitches or rats. You know, Dad's also pled not guilty. We know this was a family affair. They met and plotted for months. They voted on it. But you need something to tie George to this and to this conspiracy. And I haven't seen anything yet. So I don't know if the state just not pivoting, because originally, obviously, everyone pled not guilty. We got some guilty pleas closer to trial, but you know, you need something, some specific evidence against this defendant, as opposed to just telling the jurors how gruesome of a murder this was over 3 different locations.
I can tell you from some of the motions now, the defense had a couple of motions seeking to for a mistrial based on the graphic nature and the cumulative nature, prejudicial nature of some of the photos they've been showing about these different crime scenes. And to all accounts, they have been pretty gruesome. But I think what the state responded was these photos, the graphic nature of these crimes, the way they were committed, tell a story. And this is part of their story. And so I'm asking you, do you think what they're saying is that the way it was done, the way it was committed, is going to lead into the information about the conspiracy to commit these murders, and it's all a big part of the story. Can you see that forming here, the idea that the manner in which these crimes were committed tells part of this story?
Potentially, but normally you start at the beginning if you're a prosecutor and you work your way forward. Here, the beginning, they took the jurors to the scenes of the crime, right? And now they had, you know, the autopsy and the coroner. They're talking about these 8 victims and how they were shot execution style, most of them in their sleep. I mean, but the defense didn't object to any of this, Michael. I mean, there's no dispute that these individuals were killed, and it was a really sad case. I mean, originally folks thought it was a mob hit or potentially cartel because of the nature of the killings. But again, we really got to get to the beginning, when the plotting and planning and real conspiracy took place. And, you know, as opposed to starting in the end and working backwards. Again, it's just how I would have handled the case if I were a prosecutor, because if I'm the jurors, you're really, you know, asking yourself, okay, you know that this really sad, tragic, gruesome murder happened, but what about George Wagner?
But Nima, I want you to follow me here. What they're saying is, and by showing the jury the crime scenes, and apparently there were a few clustered closer together, and then one was like 5 or 6, 7 miles away. What they're trying to show the jury, and this was the arguments they made to the judge, is that this required great coordination and planning. So they're showing them all the different crimes and pointing out the fact that this required a lot of coordination and planning, all the different guns used, the traveling back and forth, getting in and out. Then they're going to show them the plan and conspiracy. Doesn't that make sense?
It does, but we already know that other family members have pled guilty. So there's no question that there were multiple people involved in this murder. They're going to come and they're going to testify. But if you're the state, do you want to rely on that alone? Cooperator testimony? I mean, look, there's no doubt that this was a coordinated hit, but, you know, we can't convict people. It's not guilt by association here. It's not, George Wagner's not guilty because his family members are, right? There has to be the unlawful agreement for the conspiracy. There has to be one overt act in furtherance of that conspiracy. Those are the elements of the crime. That's going to be in the jury instructions. So, you know, they have to get that agreement. They have to get that overt act. They got to meet the elements. And it's just not sufficient as a matter of law that it was a family affair that killed these 8 innocent people.
Certainly, and your point is well taken. If they want to get a conviction here, they're going to have to meet those elements. Let's hope, I'm sure at least they feel that they can.